Okay.
Okay, good. So it's always nice to hear.
Bring out the guitar.
Yeah, so without further ado, I will introduce Myra Monreal. She's our traffic consultant on this project, and she's going to show you a lot of things that are, I think, will be interesting about traffic in the town, speed limits.
Okay. Is a half an hour enough for you, or a little less? Okay.
And the recording and the folks at home, if it's okay if I take off my mask?
Yes.
Okay. We have this podium on short, so sometimes it almost works as a blocker. So today's presentation is about 15 minutes long, and I've timed it so that at the end, if you have any questions, we can try and discuss those as much as we can kind of show you the information that we have to date.
All right.
And then I'll also go through if you have a paper copy of the slides. So my name is Myra Monreal. I'm an engineer and a planner by education and experience, and I'm fortunate to have worked here in Oakland since about 2012. Again, like I said, this presentation is going to be about 15 minutes long, so we can answer questions and things that are interesting to you. If you go to the next slide, it's an agenda, right? So the ask that was made was to look at traffic in your existing neighborhoods, to focus more on the short-term improvements, right? I know you have another project where you're looking at Oakland Avenue that is separate from this, that is more long-term. This is more kind of short-term that we're trying to implement now. What we're going to do today is look at a lot of data, right? So crash information, speed profiles, we'll talk through some recommendations, as well as some things to kind of consider. You go to the next slide, which is the slide with a map on it. The first thing we looked at was crash information. So you really have to love this to do this. And I love what I do, because I looked at 5 years of crash reports that in the town of Oakland. And we're basically, again, focusing on the neighborhood. So we're looking at north of Colonial, Machete Trail on the west, Winters Landing on the east, and Lake Apopka on the north. And over a 5-year time period, there were 56 crashes that were reported by OPD, right? I also just kind of wanted to note that I did not include crashes that occurred on private property. So if someone had a fender bender on a parking lot, you know, I didn't look at that in as much detail. So if you look at the map, you'll see all those little yellow dots. Those are where the crashes occurred, and it can kind of give you an idea of where some of the hot spots are. If you go to the next slide, which has some bulletin information, again, if you don't love it and you don't want to read 56 crash reports, this is kind of a very highlighted summary of 2 of the streets that seem very important in the town, basically 10th Street and Oakland Avenue. And then another thing that we really wanted to look at were the crashes that involve non-motorized vehicles. So what you'll see here under the bullets, and I'm not going to repeat them all, but it basically describes the actions that was occurring with one of the drivers at the time of the crash. And so you have a lot of distracted drivers. I'm always impressed at the honesty that people have in terms of why they were in a fender bender. And then you can also see that even today, right, we still have people driving under the influence, and that again is also ending up in a crash. The non-motorist crashes, within the 5 years, there have been 5 reported. 2 have been on the trail, 2 have included people on bikes, 2 have included people who are walking, and 1 included a golf cart. Right? And if you have more questions about that, we can talk about that a little bit. But if you go to the next slide, which is again a graph, if you kind of want to see the trends that have occurred over the past 5 years, You're averaging about 10 to 12 crashes a year. About half of those include injuries. Basically, there was an injury recorded on the crash report. And then that bottom line shows the number of crashes that included non-motorist. So fortunately, there has not been a reported crash with a non-motorist this year or last year. When I look at the first 6 months of the 2021 data, it's about on par. There were 6 total crashes with what you've been doing within the past 5 years. So we take a look at that. We learn from the behavior, what's occurring on your roadways within the past 5 years. And then we also look at speed profiles and take a snapshot of how fast vehicles are moving. So with staff, we went and took traffic counts at 6 locations. There's actually 7. We also have we took traffic counts on the trail. Are on Star, Tub, Winter's Landing, 3 locations on Oakland Avenue. And we collected it on a weekday. The Oakland west of Machete, we added that the following month, but we also tried to get it when school was in session. And we wanted to compare, if you look at the first column, the existing speed limit, as well as the 85th, I'm sorry, which is a common engineering standard, the 50th percentile. And then I also want you to look at the last column, which are the number of vehicles that pass through a point in a 24-hour period. So for example, Star, which is an unpaved road, had 184 vehicles. Winter's Landing, which is paved, had 412. And then on Oakland Avenue, it's between 3,000 to 5,000 vehicles in a 24-hour period, right? Now, I will also say included in that count, you also have people who are riding bikes on those streets. And if you really want to drill down into that, I have that data too. And that's something we can talk about if you have any questions on that. So if you go to the next, let's talk about what we talk about, which is the 85th percentile. And if you kind of want to break that down, what is that nebulous kind of number? It basically means that if you were to think 85 out of 100 vehicles, up to 85 of those 100 vehicles were reported traveling at that speed or less. So if we were to take, for example, Winter's Landing, the 85th percentile is 25.4 miles per hour. That means if you had 100 cars 1 through 85 were driving at 25.4 miles per hour or less. So basically complying with the posted speed limit. And the reason we talk about that is often you'll hear when you're looking at traffic, there are the 3 E's, right? So you have education, which is signage. This is how fast you should be going. Enforcement, OPD. And then you have the engineering or the design of the roadway. And what this tells me is that the 3 E's that you have there right now are working pretty well, right? And we've also worked on prior surveys where residents have talked about, oh, we know not to speed in town because we know it's well enforced, right? And it's only people who don't live here that don't know it. And, you know, maybe they're the ones. So, you know, again, the fact that the enforcement is going strong is something I think that is a positive. So the question is always, and the question that was brought to me was, can we do better, right? So let's get to that 50th percentile number. And, you know, the optimist in me is always like, yes, we can do better. And so what my recommendation is to start with that 50th percentile speed, which is again, up to 50 cars are already driving at that speed or less, and make some additional short-term improvements, right? And if you look at it, it's not that much of a deviation from the 85th percentile, but I think you'll really start to see and reap the benefits of how that could help the safety of people in town. All right, next slide, recommendations. And I won't go into these in detail because I have more slides that follow that kind of have some. But it's one of those things where consistency, right? Consistent speed limits within the town. If you look at that second slide, you have posted speed limits of 15, 20, 25, and 35, all in different places. I always like to give people the opportunity to redeem themselves. And I've also found this to be effective in other towns that I've worked with. Those reminding the drivers of what their speed actually is, because there are so many other distractions, is just another choice to kind of correct that behavior. 3, looking at those trail and pedestrian crossings, and I know we've been doing this for a long time, and so I think now is probably the time to do some of these traffic control improvements. And then 4, look at Oakland, which, wow, why don't you have a meeting next week where you kind of decide and look at Oakland Avenue, kind of the future of Oakland. So, all right. So one of the recommendations is for the speed limit on Oakland Avenue to be reduced to 25 miles per hour. The speed limit on paved roads, residential paved roads, at 20 miles per hour. And then on unpaved roads, maintain your 15 miles per hour speed limit. And the reason I kind of wanted to put this next slide, slide 10, was to just kind of show you that the research shows that if you have a 20 mile per hour speed limit, and hopefully vehicles are traveling at that speed or less, if there were to be a crash with a pedestrian or a person walking, you're 9 out of 10 times going to survive, right? But obviously the faster that vehicle that is measured in tons goes, the less likely you would survive as a pedestrian or a person on a bike, or even on another type of vehicle like a golf cart. So slower speeds is proven to kind of increase survival, which is, I think, everything we're all trying to do today. All right, so consistent speed limits, again, just highlight that a little bit more, which is on slide 11. Consistent information, again, whether or not you're talking to a toddler or you're talking to a driver, clear expectations is a must. And this way, everyone knows as soon as you're in the town of Oakland, you need to be going 20 miles per hour, right? Radar speeds, if you wanted to look at a picture of one of those radar feedback speeds, it's on the right-hand side of slide 11. I took that picture that is on Ranger Road in Winter Park, right by Katie Way Trail, right? So using it within proximity of a trail is another way to kind of, you know, give people the opportunity to change their behavior, maybe slow down. Oakland Avenue, just some things to think about as you kind of go into your visioning process for Oakland Avenue. I took this picture when we were doing counts at Machete Trail, and I saw a car using the turn lane as a passing lane. Yes, yeah, I have the driver's license. I took a picture of it if anyone cares. But I also went back to the tube count speeds to see how fast they were going, and they were going 50 miles per hour. Right? So this idea of kind of shortening some of your existing turn lanes, maybe putting landscape islands where there's now paint to kind of help to deter that is one of the things that I think could go and help. In addition to just dropping a speed limit, you have to do some engineering design, especially on a road like Oakland. And that's sort of the point I want to make here. The picture on the right is a road into a development that's a little bit more mature, right? And this is in Serenbe in Georgia. That is the size of a turn lane for a development that currently has 650 people, right? And that is sufficient for what they have. And they have shows, farmers markets, right? So there are also enough points of entry so that you don't need a traditional DOT turn lane to kind of handle that queue. And because it's kind of in a rural area, they have those landscape medians in the gore to kind of also remind you, hey, you're coming up to an entrance. Or if you're the gentleman who had the car that was speeding, oh, maybe you shouldn't, right? Use this gore to use it as a passing lane because you may hit something.
And unless you have a big truck.
Yes,
probably not
or
good.
road vehicles, you know, it's just not for that. The other thing is to kind of show you the idea of what a mature tree canopy can do to kind of psychologically narrow the road. You have some great tree canopy coming in here, and you know, in a few years, you'll start to have that kind of narrowing of the roadway through your tree canopy. One other recommendation that we kind of talk about here is the tactile warning surfaces. So this may be another kind of short-term solution if you want to look at it maybe at the intersection of Oakland and Tug, is because a lot of those crashes are basically rear end crashes where one person is distracted. So they are, you can fill in the blank, on their phone, handing a water bottle to a crying child, changing the station on their radio. People still change stations on the radio. And, you know, tactile warning surfaces are like kind of rumble strips, several feet back, and kind of remind you, hey, there's a stop sign coming up. Maybe you should put that down and focus on stopping at the stop sign.
How do you give classes in how four-way stops work?
How, you know, it's stop signs, I think, are one of those things everyone, if they're overused, kind of like anything else, then people don't pay attention to them. And so it's a combination of placing them correctly.
Well, I was being more sarcastic about
sorry. With the mask, I can't read faces.
Sarcasm.
Sarcasm
is people get to a four-way stop and they don't know who gets to go when.
Yes. So that's where sight triangles come in. And I know this is, again, I have a very technical answer because I'm a very technical person, is the more you can see vehicles coming, the more likely you are to stop. And that's actually coming into play in some of our recommendations on the trail crossings. And you're actually foreshadowing kind of where I'm going.
Okay.
The other thing to think about, again, in terms of kind of a short-term thing that you can do with Catherine Ross coming in with a lot of activity occurring around Hull Island. Those would be locations where there's cross traffic, right, that may merit stop signs at those intersections. On Nixon, we have documented crashes with pedestrians, and there's a lot of pedestrian activity on that street. So that may be another intersection that you look at installing all-way stop signs. When you look at the trail interface with a lot of the existing roadways in the town, I think what's important to note is the amount of traffic on the trail has increased, right? Especially over time. And typically when you have a stop controlled intersection, the roadway that has the largest volume, right, has the right of way. And then the roads intersecting that have a lower amount of volume, you're the one to stop. Typically, especially when trails are built in rural areas, there are more cars than people or users on the trail. Fast forward to 2021 and the West Orange Trail in your backyard, and attendance has increased, it's skyrocketed. Orange County will tell you it's up 150% for prior years. We also took counts to look at the numbers, and we've identified that on some streets, especially like Jefferson, where there are 87 vehicles that cross Jefferson, and then if you have 640 trail users on the West Orange Trail, you know, the users of the trail should probably have the right of way at that intersection. So I want to kind of note that it's not a kind of one thing fits all, right? So West Orange Trail on Winter's Landing, you have 400 plus cars on there. You know, an all-way stop makes sense. There is probably some maintenance that can be done, and the 2016 study that MetroPlan did identified some of those things in terms of what we're talking about, the side triangles, being able to see users on the road. What you're doing now in Oakland Park, you know, staff has worked with the developer to kind of make sure that the trail is raised to a level to where someone on the trail and someone driving could actually look at each other in the eye, right? When you're trying to decide to stop, actually making eye contact, right, is a really important thing that can help people figure out, hey, I need to stop because I can see someone. So whether or not you do it with a change of material, whether or not you do it by changing the elevation or changing the traffic control, those are kind of the things that you need to look at the intersections when you're looking at how to manage kind of the growth. Some other thing that's kind of new, and then I just kind of wanted to highlight here, this idea of the stop signs for the roadways at the trail crossings. We just talked about it. The concept that where trail users is greater than the number of vehicles, right? Consider a stop sign for the vehicles. That's not anything new in the MetroPlan 2016 study, which included the West Orange Trail intersections here in Oakland. That was one of the recommendations. There was a kickoff meeting today for the Coast to Coast Trail, where DOT is looking at that, and that study is going to take 2 years. So just think the study is 2 years. And I think this recommendation is consistent with a 2016 study. It'll be consistent with the larger Coast to Coast Trail study, and something that you guys could implement sooner rather than later. All right, so speed limits of 20 miles per hour. So I congratulate you for taking this into consideration. This is a movement that's occurring. You'll hear about it a lot on the West Coast. 20 is plenty, but it's also being done in your backyard, right? So the villages, the speed limit posted or not posted is 20 miles per hour. Another neighborhood, San Marco and Jacksonville, they're in the process of looking at their residential and doing the same thing. So this is something that I think is fitting for the town of Oakland. You have the data to kind of support that. You have the enforcement that will support it. And I think that will kind of help keep the trend of the crashes, and again, injuries, safety, those type of things. And again, if you have any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them. You can always.
I have some thoughts. I'm sure Mike and Joseph may have some thoughts too.
I just have one question. Is there a certain time of day that had elevated crashes?
So it depends on what type of crash. I will say that the crashes that involve pedestrians, people walking, and the golf cart were all almost at times that were dark, right? And so the person that got hit on Oakland Avenue around Nixon, it was dark and they were wearing dark clothing and they got hit by a vehicle. The golf cart crash in 2018, I believe, which was not in Oakland, does it?
I don't remember that.
was a golf cart, so it was not a legal street legal low-speed vehicle. It did not have lights, and it was on Oakland Avenue at 6:30 in the morning, I believe. Okay? And so
probably taking kids to school
at 6:30.
Oh, that's a little early.
It was well, it was an older gentleman. I don't want to say retired, but you know, when I get to that age, I hope to be retired. And so, you know, some of the ones, especially the ones that involve is visibility, right? So kind of like the time. If you're ask me another question, maybe a different way. I want to make sure I'm answering it.
No, you answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, just some interesting things to know, right? So we also, these tube counts can also distinguish the type of vehicles that are on the roadways, whether or not it's a car, it's a truck, you know, and I can almost sit there and predict the movement of, let's say, a group bicycle or motorbike ride. Like I was like, what occurs Wednesday at noon where you have 40 people all that can go 20 miles per hour, you know, on Oakland Avenue, and it's a cycle. So it's either a bicycle or a motorcycle. So the peaks of the users by mode vary because those large group rides come in at, let's say, noon. When you look at from a trail perspective, you can definitely see there's more movement on the trail. It's an AM and PM peak, the same as vehicles, but there's also a lunch peak. And that was pre-pandemic. So I can only imagine now how many people are, you know, taking that lunch break kind of outside if they're working from home, or if you're cooped up at home with your kids. You know, it's like lunchtime, get out. So.
Oh, no, that answers it. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so we can drill down the data to that level if you were to have specific questions on something like that.
Okay.
I guess it would be hard for us to do here because we have 3 different speed limits we're considering. But when I go up to North Carolina, some of these Western North Carolina towns, they have signs, and you guys can chime in here. Your thoughts on this too, on entry points into town that say speed limit X throughout town. There will be no other signs. And a lot of little towns do that. So have you seen any of that at all?
Here in Florida, you may not see it a lot. I think, like I said, a lot of the residents know what it is, right? They've been conditioned, they know what it is. I think the only reason you actually have 2 is because you have the unpaved roads. If you didn't have unpaved roads, again, 20 is plenty. And the other thing, going from 35 to 20 on a road like Oakland as it is now would be asking a lot. And so it's not a reasonable change that I think we could see a shift to, but based on the data, you know, bringing it down to 25, and then maybe after other things occur on Oakland Avenue, 20 may be right, okay? But it's a combination of, again, education, enforcement, and engineering. And, you know, we could say just make Oakland Avenue 20 miles per hour, but if we didn't have the enforcement and the engineering to support it, I don't know if it really happened. So I think this is a more reasonable recommendation, and over time it may change. But yes, and from an enforcement perspective, you know, what works best for the town, we've had this discussion with staff where same thing, at the entrance, you just go, the speed limit is, and I think it's one of those things. Most people, if they're on Oakland Avenue, they're going somewhere. They're going to something, right? They're going to the nature preserve. They're going to the trail. They're going to their homes. So I feel like your users, right, tend to be more familiar with the area. If you're trying to get somewhere really fast, you should be taking that parallel roadway to the south, because that is built to be fast, right? And you know, that is where you can go 45 miles per hour if you want to go 45 miles per hour.
Thank you.
I have some thoughts. Four-way stop at Tub is that looks like a higher rate of accidents.
So the crashes at Tub and Oakland,
Yeah, the four-way.
they tend to be rear end.
Right.
And whether or not you're going north on Tub or you're going east or west on Oakland, it's rear end. And you guys can correct me if you're wrong, because I just read the paperwork. Those are your distracted drivers. So the first driver stops, the second driver is distracted by a game on their phone, a crying kid, and then they don't realize that there's a car in front of them and they need to stop. And so that's where you already have a 4-way stop or an all-way stop. One recommendation was to be rumble strips. So prior to it, so that it kind of gives you, this is a little warning, so that hopefully if you are distracted, you feel that jolt and it's not like a shock. If everyone's, rumble strips, it's just enough to kind of let you go, oh, what's going on? And then hopefully you see another vehicle going.
And what we're talking about here, I think, is a lot of short-term answers, and then there's, like you said, the longer-term strategy.
Correct. And I'll add short-term, low-cost solutions that you could probably try and implement quickly. Because there are lots of projects that will take a long time and utilize a lot of funds.
Gotcha.
But this is something that could be implemented in the near term.
So here's my thoughts are there. I don't think there's anybody in Oakland who's going to argue with lowering speed limits in town. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was looking at you, Ann.
I said
Law
absolutely.
enforcement.
You're looking at Chief.
Oh.
They said the same thing. I do not like the thought of, and people use this as a suggestion all the time, are the speed tables.
Speed humps or speed tables.
Speed humps for the speed tables.
Yes. Because that just doesn't fit within what we're trying to achieve. But their bicycles don't stop. And whether they should or shouldn't, and whether we have an opinion of whether they should or shouldn't, putting stop signs at the trail just seems like it just makes it safer to me. And I love the idea of turn lane planters and tree canopies and things that just kind of slow the traffic down. But 20 miles an hour makes me a happy person.
I don't have a problem with 20 on Oakland Avenue. I'll be honest with you.
I don't know. How that would be an interesting.
What it does for me, what it does is it keeps people from using it as a cut through because they're on traffic because they know.
That would be, I think, an interesting conversation. I mean, I wouldn't mind it if 50 weren't a failing highway.
Yeah.
But I'd love to know what, kind of the data would be on that.
Yeah.
Because I think what you're doing is you're trying to discourage cut through traffic. And then the other question that I think we need to talk about somewhere along the line is construction vehicles and delivery trucks. On Plant Street, they don't allow them per se. They have signs out. I know that, sometimes it's unavoidable, but we had construction trucks trying to go down dirt roads they had no business being on. So I think we need to think about how we address that.
Yeah. Another interesting thing, and I was having this conversation with someone earlier, is again, especially here, you have a lot of low-hanging utilities. And at least once a year, a construction truck comes through and tears down the utilities, and your public works guys are the first to report it. So I just thought that was wonderful cooperative nature of everyone. And then if you read the reports, again, it's like a snapshot in time. You see that someone says, I saw what truck it is, and I know what house was under construction. So we went to their house and we went and told the guy that, it was their mixer truck that took down our power line. There's a house right across the street from the park. Bless their heart. They've lost power at least twice because they've had the power lines come down because of that exact thing. So I do feel like as some of the additional roadway network comes in that connects to 50, Star, Catherine Ross, as long as there is a path or an alternative it'll be a lot easier to prohibit that in specific areas. Right now, without some of those connections, you know, with the basic in and out being tub, you know, it's kind of an uphill battle. But once Star comes in, once Catherine Ross comes in, you know, you can recommend that construction traffic, and they have a construction traffic plan where they come from Colonial and use those access points instead of coming across, you know, Oakland Avenue.
Yeah. And I would like to make sure that we do talk about lowering the speed limit on Oakland Avenue so that we're educated as to, do we have an option? You know, I personally don't think 25 would, you know, at this point work, but maybe 30 would. I don't know. And the other thing, one other thought before, otherwise I'll forget it, is keeping, and this is more in Orange County, I believe, thing, keeping motor vehicles off the bike trail. They get confused and they drive down the bike trail.
Especially like around Machete, where it's a slide
Right.
path. And there are little things, like I even noticed the stop bar on Machete should be before the trail crosswalk. And so I think, you know, that intersection will be improved as other things come in through there. But yes, I mean, that is one of those things that no one wants to see a vehicle diverted on the trail. The crash that was with a vehicle on the trail was around the Jefferson intersection, where they almost have to cross the trail twice. And that one was at night.
When they're not supposed to be on the trail to begin with.
Correct. And then even though there's a fence, they hit the fence, which I'm like, okay, at least you hit a fence, not a person.
Right.
And so, you know, again, you're doing a lot of the right things, and that's why you don't see too many. But there's always room for improvement. And much like you said earlier, when we were looking at recommendations and alternatives, we wanted to make sure it kind of fit the town, right? And the speed humps and the speed tables are very disruptive. That's the nice way I like to say it. And so that's why we tried to kind of focus on this reinforcement of behavior through the here signs, something that is a reminder, the road strips, and those things together, I think, are just as effective, right, as a speed table or a speed hump without being disruptive. Because as you said, a lot of the people on Oakland are residents, and, you know, residents hate those things as much as anybody else.
And, you know, I'm not even I see the value, but I'm not even a fan of this is your speed. I mean, I know we have one that's mobile, and I understand why we do that, but to put them up permanently in places, it's just, you start to lose that old, you know, quaint feel of a town. And I want to do everything I can to keep people safe. We all do. But we also want to do it in a way that keeps the character. But lowering the speed limit, I mean, I can't imagine there's a person anywhere in this town that would not like that. So anyway, okay, Steve, I'm sorry.
Just a couple of my thoughts. So one thing with Oakland Avenue, one of the biggest straightaways that we have is through the industrial park and over by Trailside and coming down to the nature preserve. That's going to be taken out when the bridge goes. So for 12 months, that straightaway is not going to be there. And so that's going to automatically calm. But what I'd like to do is look at that 25 mile an hour. And I think that one of the key things that Myra said was the engineering, you know, education, engineering, and enforcement. As we go through this planning, and we're having the first community meeting next Thursday, we can talk about what some of those engineering things are with these different intersections and different things, and take Myra's recommendations and incorporate it in those. And that's when I think it'll start to make a lot of sense for 25 or 20, wherever we land, is as we start talking about those things and start coming up with some plans. And then we can do as that bridge, the new bridge goes back in, maybe we do a couple of short-term things to go ahead and lower that speed limit. And then we've got some long-term planning that will, support that.
Right. So, okay, go.
So, I'd like to look at that kind of as a kind of a longer term thing and then get some feedback on some very short-term things, which would be the stop signs on the trail and the consistent speed limits throughout town. That if we're in agreement, if the commission's in agreement with the 15 and the 20 on the dirt roads and the paved roads within the rest of the neighborhoods, then I'd like to come back in a month or two with some kind of a policy or ordinance to set that into place. And then we can start properly putting out the right signs in the right places and then enforcing those speed limits.
With the intent of when we go to start pulling together the look and the feel of the town, the look and the feel of those signs may change.
Well, these are going to be the speed limit enforcement signs. So I don't know that those will change.
All right,
but long term, when we're talking about Oakland Avenue, part of it is to talk about the character and the feel, and then to be able to talk about some of the kind of signage that you would want for wayfinding and identity as part of that long-term project. But I'm just talking enforcement signs, stop signs, speed signs,
gotcha.
Putting them in the right places that, educate people on what the speed limits are.
Well,
I think we have one 15-mile-an-hour sign over on Pensioner Gully. We've got some 25 and 20 kind of spread out, but there's really just no real consistency.
Well, and I see speed limit signs, being themed eventually, but that's.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that could be a longer term to talk about, but just getting the education and the consistency across. I'd like to just start small and just kind of work through some of the things.
I think this is great. And philosophically, I just wanted to add one thing, while, I said to Mike, recognizing that Highway 50 is a failing road, we also recognize that it's a state road that we don't necessarily have a lot of jurisdiction over. Doesn't mean we should throw our hands up and not try and influence things on that road and what happens, just like the turnpike. And just like we will eventually be responsible for Oakland Avenue. Right now, that's a county road. But
no, it's a town road.
It is ours now?
It is absolutely.
Okay, I thought after the improvements.
They were on the hook to make the improvements, but it is our road.
So that's our road, but it didn't used to be our road. So we're not, I just want people not to think we're throwing our hands up and going, oh, that's Highway 50, it's a failing road and there's nothing we can do about it. But it does not belong to us, and we can do everything we can to try and influence what happens out there, but we don't own it.
I will tell you one of the things with Highway 50, they'll let you do a lot of things out there if you're willing to pay for it.
Of course they will.
That is one of the keys.
They cut the bushes in front of Aldi.
that is one.
I know.
One of the key things with that is, they'll let you have a lot of influence as long as you
want to pay for it
and maintain
it. Yes,
right.
Yes. So anyway, I know we're running late. It's an interesting topic. Do we have any comments from the audience? This is just a workshop. We make no decisions. We're just talking about what we might like to do next.
I have one more one.
Okay.
You mentioned all the trail crossings.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to go on record myself as I think we should have a stop sign in every street that crosses.
You may as well. They don't stop anyway.
Well, and that's the problem is it really doesn't matter whose fault it is. When a car hits a bike, a bike's going
to pay.
So it doesn't matter if it's their fault or not. If we can stop that by something as simple as a stop sign, I'm all in for that.
Well, I have the report that they did, and they did look at all of these crossings here. And they are, like Myra said, they're working on a plan right now. What they're doing is they're moving all the way across the coast to coast trail, and they're looking to have consistency among the trail crossings. So they're making a lot of recommendations all the way through. trails that are being built versus, trails that are already in place. And so, doing this will help with that consistency, with the overall coast to coast trail, which we're a part of. So I think that's important. So we'll look at that. We also need to work with the county. We need to work on some of the sight lines at where the roads and the trails where they've become a little overgrown. So, I've talked with Mike about getting with the county so that we can go through and look at each intersection, and then we'll come through and put the stop signs in. And, but I'll come back to the commission. We'll have that discussion, get approval, formal approval, and then we'll start that project. So, and we, all the staff's been talking about this. Had Chief Peak went through some of these ideas, and we'll make sure everybody's in the right place, and and then we'll bring it to the commission and get that formal approval that we need to move forward.
Yeah, and I'd like to take just a quick minute. Is there anybody in the audience who has anything they want to add, or online?
You're not audience.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, we have that other thing called the Mobility Master Plan.
Right.
And we've certainly been using that and working it. And what that does is it really takes a look at even 50. And it says, okay, yeah, it's a fast road right now. It was built for speed. But take things like extending Star out to 50 and make these intersections and make these grids take place, you're slowing it down. So on a long-term basis, that's kind of what you're doing here, is you do have an influence. It's not, it's one of those long-term, just want to mention that.
Anybody else? Okay. Myra, thank you. This is great.
Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to next steps, because this is a subject that it needs to be addressed.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll bring back, we'll break it up into pieces and start bringing it back to the commission for.
We actually might have some positive feedback.
Ooh. Can we close the work session?
Yes.
About 5 minutes to.
Yes, 5 minutes, sure. So we will close the work session and take a 5-minute break and start again.
To introduce our new officers and new members, including I guess Officer Echo here. First, let me talk about the Canine Handler. This is Officer Andrew Redistricting, in case some of you that never had him before. He's had a long career already. Started in 2008, Sanford Police Department, worked in 15. He left police work, as some do, and was the head of advanced training and sales for Central Florida Canine. Central Florida Canine is a premier training canine company which sells dogs to the police and military. So he has experience with that. In 2018, we actually hired Officer Riggs to work at the Oakland Police Department. At that time, Sergeant Vitale was our canine handler, but he's always had an interest in this should the opportunity ever come up. And it did. And I can tell you there was no other officer in the Oakland Police Department more qualified for this position than Officer Riggs. Canine handlers from Winter Garden PD helped us with him in selecting a dog for us. And maybe you can speak to that a little bit more, Drew.
So we've got our dog from a local vendor, Southern Coast. Thank you. Southern Coast Canine is a vendor in Edgewood, up in New Smyrna Beach. They supply dogs from pretty much worldwide. They've been around forever. Jeff Doyle, who is retired from the Orange County Sheriff's Office as a handler, he's also a handler for Winter Garden. He came with me to do the selection process for Echo. Echo is a Belgian Malinois German Shepherd. He's on the smaller side. He's probably 55 or 60 pounds. He's trained in French, and we are about 8 weeks through school.
How old is he?
About That's up for debate. Ben says 2 years, but I don't believe him even a little bit.
A little bit of, still has a little bit of a puppy in it.
Oh, he has a lot of puppy. He's dying right now.
And Officer Ricks have approximately 740 hours of advanced canine training they have to attend together, at the end of which we think is going to be what, October?
Second week of October will be the 480-hour mark, and then we have you have secondary school after that.
Okay, and then we get them FDLE certified, so they'll be fully certified to work as a dual dog in Oakland. And this is Echo. I know we probably want to do some pictures, but
yes.
Can I introduce Officer Reparo first?
Sure.
And we'll do it all together, then we'll get out of your way.
No, you're not the other one.
Officer Rivera, I'm sorry, is a star too, so we want to make sure.
That's what I said.
She's a 31-year-old Connecticut native that moved to Florida when she was 10 years old. And at age 18, went to work for T.G. Lee, and over the period rose to become a branch assistant or a office manager. She then worked as an account coordinator for a local food distributor, which unfortunately had to lay off everyone due to COVID last year. So at that time, she decided to try a lifelong dream and go to the police academy and become a police officer, which she successfully did. Officer Ribeiro is a graduate of Lake Tech Institute for Public Safety, the Police Academy, and was processing with us while she was still enrolled. We actually actively recruited her. We look forward to a long and fulfilling career at the town of Oakland. I give you Nicole Ribeiro. There. How you doing, sir?
Hi, Dan.
He helped pin, we did the swearing ceremony at the PD, and he helped pin the badge on. But these are our two new members for the agency that, and I'm very thankful for all the help and support that the board has always given to the Oakland Police Department, and our people are sure appreciative of it too. So if you guys want to do any pictures right here.
Of course.
Only three, you can't.
Watch me.
Yeah. Yeah, you work miracles with that app. I've seen you. Oh,
Sorry.
oh I can't. Wait, okay, take a video. Yeah, I got my card.
We're in the middle of my work right now.
You don't want to get confused.
That would be bad, wouldn't it? Okay. Got you from there. All right, everyone.
Yeah.
You want to take the mask off for a minute? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Puppy over here.
Whistle.
Echo.
I can't. Okay, I got it.
It's grandma.
Don't leave yet.
Yes. Don't be shy. All right. Here, almost.
Oh, okay, I'm tall.
All right, everyone ready? 1, 2, 3. Echo. Here. Perfect.
You got mine?
Good, thank you.
Let's get one with her. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're done. Moving on the way. Come on, buddy. Yeah, let's go.
Congratulations.
Boy, thank you. Go boy. No, I know, that's a lot.
That's all right. Just stay in front. I need to hide my big belly.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Very good, thank you.
Congratulations.
Welcome. This is the mayor. You didn't know what Vice Mayor said. Town manager. I think we do. This is Commissioner Nicole.
Thank you. Yes, and a couple people.
Did you want to get a picture of your dad?
Yeah.
Do you want to come on up, sir?
Come on up. That's okay.
Come on, Daddy.
What do you call him? Dad? Yeah.
Funny thing about that.
Nice to meet you.
Your dad is better. You got to appreciate it.
No.
You get to be with her.
takes $2.
Better go. That's funny.
You went to over there.
Okay, ready? 1, 2, smile. All right, got it.
Thank
Looking forward to seeing you.
Knock 'em dead.
Very much. God bless you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right.
I should have bet you that.
Pardon?
That's how it had. You always try to hide. Didn't work this time, did it?
No, they have enough bodies.
Yeah, it ended up.
Yeah. Can we touch the dog? No, he's working on bite training right now. Hey, we're not going to touch the dog. All right, we have 2 proclamations. One is the Town of Oakland Hispanic Heritage Month. And whereas throughout Hispanic Heritage Month, we celebrate the history and contributions that Hispanic and Latin Americans have made in the country, in the state of Florida. And whereas Florida has the 3rd largest population of Hispanic people in the nation, with more than 4 million diverse residents in the Sunshine State. And whereas we honor the rich and vibrant traditions of Hispanic and Latinx Americans whose ancestors have come from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. And whereas Hispanic Americans played an important role in the history of Florida from the early days of the pioneer to our current legacy, to international trade, technology, education, aerospace, and whereas Hispanic Floridians have been an integral part of our communities whose contributions, passion, and skills as an agricultural producers, farm workers, and growers have long shaped Florida's agricultural success. And whereas from September 15th to October 15th, we pay tribute to the dedication and service of Hispanic and Latinx Floridians for their efforts to improve the state of Florida and pave the way for future generations. Okay, we don't have anybody here.
We don't, but what we'll do is frame it and put it over as part of our exhibit at the Arts and Heritage Center.
Awesome. Yeah. We also have one for National Preparedness Month. Whereas the month of September is recognized as National Preparedness Month and creates the opportunity for every resident of the town of Oakland to prepare their homes, businesses, and communities for emergencies and natural disasters. And whereas the 2021 National Preparedness Month theme is Prepare to Protect, preparing for disasters is protecting everyone you love. Whereas an emergency, every second counts, and emergency preparedness programs educate individuals and families on how to prepare before, during, and after a disaster. And whereas these programs address threats of severe weather, terrorism, and other potential life-threatening circumstances to make our communities better prepared, resilient, and safer. And whereas emergency preparedness is the responsibility of every resident, and all town Oakland residents are urged to make preparedness a priority and work together to ensure that individuals, families, and communities are prepared for disasters and emergencies of any type. And whereas all Oakland residents are encouraged to participate in preparedness activities and become more prepared by making a plan, building a kit, and staying informed. Thank you. Gave me 2 long ones.
I know. I'd like to hear you read.
Oh, I don't think that's. All right. Public forum. If we have anybody here who wishes to speak on a matter that is not already on the agenda, this is your opportunity to do so. We ask that if you're in the room, do we have anyone? Okay. Come to the podium, please, and let us know who you are. And please try and keep your comments brief.
Sure, I will. My name is Matt Filer. I'm a town resident. I live in the Winters Landing community. And I'd like to thank everyone today for wearing masks. I see everyone wearing them, and I really appreciate that. It's one of the most generous things that we can do in this pandemic to protect ourselves and, more importantly, protect others. So I thank you all for wearing that. It's a very generous thing. And I'm asking that we extend that generosity to those unvaccinated people in our community right now, which are students, 500 students over at Oakland Avenue Charter. I have 2 young children there, and their safety is on my mind, even more now than ever. In our hospitals in this area, there are more children hospitalized due to COVID than at any other time in this pandemic. I think that this commission has, over the last several meetings, said that we would wait and see what's gone on, what's going to happen, what's happened, and I think that the time for waiting and seeing is over. In the last 2 weeks, we've had 20 cases in our school. That's more than the entire year last year. I hope that every child that gets COVID, I pray that they recover. They have mild cases, but I feel as a parent that it's cruel that I have to roll the dice in sending my kids to the school here without any safety precautions enacted by this commission. Every Orange County school teacher has to wear a mask. At Foundation Academy, every teacher also has to wear a mask to protect the students. Businesses across Central Florida are requiring thousands of private sector employees to wear masks while they work. And I ask, why is this town not doing the same to protect our children? I really encourage you to take this seriously because they're vulnerable and they can't make the decision themselves. This body can. We need to find creative ways to separate our children at lunchtime. Despite the governor's executive order regarding students, we can require our staff to wear masks. We can also incentivize them to get vaccinated, like the event we're having tomorrow. I think that'd be a nice thing to encourage our teachers to get vaccinated and give them an incentive to do so. We can follow the developments in Orange County. In fact, tonight, Teresa Jacobs has asked the board of this Orange County School Board to enact mask mandates. That's happening as we speak tonight. It's not the time to wait and see anymore. We need to make a decision to protect our kids. I thank you for listening, and I look forward to your actions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else virtually that would like to speak? I see a hand up.
Oh, Amy, do you have your hand up? Oh, maybe it's my hand.
It's her hand. It's Elisa's hand.
It's my hand.
Sorry, Amy.
All right, seeing nothing else, we're going to move on to the next subject. We will take your comments seriously. Thank you for taking the time to come and do that. The consent agenda. Do we have any questions on the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion to accept consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any questions or comments from the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving on to Oakland Park Phase 7 update. I know Deborah's here.
Deborah Devins is here. Hi, Deborah. She's the manager there. She's a well watcher. Went up here and actually get her a presentation close to mine, which I think Mr. Engineer is here too. So to say that, I don't know how many times, how many iterations have there been in this little section?
On this little section?
Yeah. 15.
That's just what Dave's done. It doesn't count what Mike and I've done.
We're all focused on getting it right.
Right.
I had a friend who used to say right's right and wrong's forever.
The one thing I'll ask you to do is just accept the changes at the end of her presentation.
Okay.
So Jake can speak to that.
Thank you, Jay. And thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners, for the time to review. Hopefully one of our last site plan changes of Oakland Park, as this is our last phase in Oakland Park. So I didn't know who might be in the audience today, so I wanted to just go a little bit, back to give, a little bit of an overview of the overall site. When Oakland Park was approved, the overall entitlements were 870 units. And then through consecutive site plans and other approvals, those numbers came down to 779. And then with this new site plan approval for the last phase, we'll actually be proposing an overall 777 units with this new plan. So if 7 really is a lucky number, I think 3 times should be pretty good, right? So this is the town of Oakland portion of Oakland Park. We have 3 phases. This is the phase 6A, which was the first phase of 38 residential units that is fully under construction. I think we're pretty close to building out. 6B is under construction right now. That's 135 lots right here. And this is the Tilden Oaks connection. And that's actually our little trail crossing right there. And then here's phase 7. And the area that we wanted to specifically talk to you about today is what we're proposing will be 70 lots in what we are calling phase 7 South. So one of the things that Mr. Kuntz asked me to do as we were preparing the multitude of site plans was making sure that we had consistency with previous approvals in the development agreement. And I thought this was one of the interesting things in the last approvals that talked about accommodating a substantial amount of open space, providing for the lower density, and also vehicular trips greatly reduced. And one of the things that we are really challenged with in this phase 7 site was a lot of development needing to be done on the site. And so I think this site plan, through the cooperation of everyone, will greatly reduce a lot of construction trips that are coming out on site. So this is the originally approved site plan for phase 7 South. Just to give you a little bit of orientation, get my red marker. So so we all are aware of the 100-foot buffer along Star Street. And under this site plan, as part of that 100-foot buffer, there was a 12-foot drive lane that accessed all of these homes that were fronting onto that buffer. And in 12 feet, you can only drive on it. There's no parking there. And so that was one of our big concerns, was that there wasn't going to be adequate parking there. Also, as it is within the buffer, there's actually a fair amount of trees that it impacts. And so having an opportunity to remove it could also benefit the canopy that's there today. So that was one of the constraints. We also, along Star Street is our high point. And then as you move east, there's quite a lot of topography and fall, particularly in this area. And so, especially when you look at a T&D project, which requires alleys, there's not a lot of flexibility to work with that grade and kind of step down with it in this particular orientation where the homes are fronting, because that pretty much has to be a flat site unless you're going to do walkout basements, which is difficult to do in an alley in a rear load configuration. So that was one of our other challenges. We had 10 lots fronting here. There are also the open space that was along the buffer in these 2 locations are bifurcated by the alley. They're also narrower, which also would limit the tree save opportunities. And we walked the site with Mike and Jay and Steve, and trying to find some of those specimen trees that we wanted to save. And this site really doesn't do as well as it could to be able to save those trees. And I think at our last meeting, when you guys approved the last plat, trees was a big issue. And so we wanted to focus in on that. So we worked with the town, and this was one of the recommendations was, instead of the homes fronting and working with that grade sloping down, that the homes actually step down with the grade. And that's what you'll see with our plan. And that significantly helps us reduce the amount of import fill that comes out onto the site, so which will greatly reduce the trips coming out onto the site for construction. So here is the version 15 point of the site plan. And you can see where we've got these two lots are not facing the buffer anymore. They're now siding, and these homes now side as they go down the hill. You know, same thing here. And then those two open space pockets, instead of being 60 foot wide and right here and here, this is now almost 130 feet wide. So that will give us a much better opportunity for the trees that are in this location to be able to save them, especially since we're working with grade and we won't have to bring in a lot of fill, which once we bring in the fill, then the trees are gone regardless. There's some other points on here. We eliminated the drive lane, which is here. So now the 100-foot buffer is just 100 foot of natural space. So that will make a big difference. This plan actually does increase the overall open space for phase 7. It'll be a modest increase, but it will be an increase. And once we get into the more detailed plat, we'll have all of those actual acreages for you. So you'll see all of that. Mentioned the larger contiguous open space. Talked about grading. Oh, and then under the development agreement, we had a requirement to have 10 feet of landscaping and fencing along Winter's Landing down here. And so this site plan just, even though the other site plan, as we would have platted, we would have done all of that, this site plan now shows that. We also added a 20-foot drainage swale and easement that will help deal with some of the off-site drainage coming from Winter's Landing from those adjacent lots. We were also asked to widen these roads so that we would have the opportunity for on-street parking, which not only will slow down traffic, but also accommodate all of our guests, right? We increased the lots that are on the corners and on the edges. So we'll actually have a few more larger lot offerings than originally contemplated. And the only open space we eliminated that we've replaced is there was a connection to this open space tract here in Winter's Landing. There was a small 20-foot easement to it. We have eliminated that. So here's the plan side by side. Just to kind of see the comparison. One of the things that I really like on this particular plan is that this through road that comes through here, now you have this interaction with nature and water, where before you just had this big long stream in front of homes. So I really like that opportunity. In the planning and zoning meeting update, they asked where the lift station was going. In the original plan, it was located here. We're basically keeping it in the same location. Some of you know the Rubright out parcel that's not part of Oakland Park. We still have to provide access to that site, so that access will still be there, just in case anybody asks. Oh, and then there's a big tree here that was going to be in the middle of this road. And so we decided to do a little tree island around that as well, just to try to work around some of those specimen trees. So it was a great opportunity to take a fresh look at the site, working with the existing topography, trying to work with the trees, and also continue to keep our lot yield up. So under these two plans, we are now down to 70 lots. The original, or actually for all of phase 7 will be 93 lots. And it was originally planned for 96. And then when the preliminary plat came through, it was 95. So we're losing one extra lot there under this scenario. Last but not least, just to review the stipulations to let you know that we have all of the stipulations in the development agreement have remained unchanged. No houses are fronting North Star Street. The two street connections to North Star Street on Demons Avenue, as well as a new road that will be south of East 6th Avenue are still there. We're adding open space and tree preservation along the Star Street buffer. That's actually been a little bit more enhanced because the drive lane is gone now. And then all of the Winter's Landing things that I went through with the 10-foot easement, and now the drainage are there. We'll be adding the stop signs. Lots facing North Star Street are no longer facing. They were required to be a minimum of 60 foot wide. And actually those lots that are fronting are now 70, or not fronting, but will be siding that are actually 70 foot wide. So they're bigger. And then, the 100-foot buffer has obviously been preserved. So that's the summary of the new plan.
Hey, do we have any questions?
No questions. I'm just, I just, hoping and lean on staff to ensure that we are meeting, all that's been asked. Because I know, as you stated, this has been a ever-changing process. And so I want to make sure that
We feel good about it.
yeah, everyone's good on each side. Just want to make sure.
Less lots, more green space.
Right, yeah.
It's how can you go wrong?
I do like the
It's
road.
definitely been a collaborative effort, and we've looked at it from a planning, from an engineering, from the development agreement standpoint, which is why it took us, 15 iterations to get here. So I think it's a win-win, and then we'll follow through. The one last issue that we had was the right-of-ways and parking, and they've addressed that from last week to this week with the streets. So we'll just continue to follow through and make sure that it gets executed as planned.
Okay. So, Mike, anything?
No question, just a comment. There's just nothing about this that we can say, why in the world would you do that? Because it's just a win every way we go with it. So for 15, if that is your actual number, we certainly appreciate you working with us and the diligence you put into this thing. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments from the audience? Okay. Do we have any questions from those who are joining us from afar? Please raise your hand. Okay, bring it back to the table. I need a motion to accept this.
I'll make the motion to accept phase 7 Oakland Parks plan as presented.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I've asked for public comment. So all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we got some public hearings.
Rain stops, you guys can jet, huh?
Yeah, I think it sounds like it stopped.
Yeah.
All right. Acknowledging that we're running behind, Jay
This one's Jeff.
or Jeff.
I'll just read it real quick for the record.
That's a hint, by the way, in case you didn't understand that.
This is ordinance 2021-18, an ordinance of the town of Oakland, Florida, vacating an existing portion of North Brock Street lying between East Gully Avenue and the West Orange Trail, Railroad Avenue, providing for severability, conflict, and an effective date. The clicker. Okay.
Oh, so I can actually just move right ahead
You
here.
should be able to.
Is up forward or is down forward?
Down, right?
Okay, the purpose of this presentation anyway is to go through to recommend that the commission consider approval to vacate a portion of North Brock Street between Gully Avenue and the West Orange Trail, with the intent being for the expansion of a redundant well. In this particular case, I see it's not wanting to participate with me. That's because I'm pushing the wrong button. The town currently actually owns the properties to the west and to the east, with the small portion in between, which is 80 by 170. Currently, it is an undeveloped right-of-way, so it has never actually been developed or used as a right-of-way, and it's essentially a right-of-way to nowhere as it runs into the backside of the lots. So as a public purpose vacation, it pretty much meets all the intent. With the making the east side, which is currently town-owned property, and the west side, which is currently town-owned property, one large contiguous property, to be able to expand to the water system, which is the last and probably one of the most important points to meet the current and future needs of our citizens. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of ordinance 2021-18 for the vacation of the portion of North Brock Street as it is described within the accompanying ordinance.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Pretty easy.
Yeah. More words in what I said probably than in my entire staff report and presentation.
So I've looked at this and this is not impacting you from any homes, correct?
I'm sorry.
I've looked at this. That's okay. And this is not impacting the view from any homes?
No, currently it again is undeveloped. So
you saw the presentation on the well that they would put in just next to the stormwater pond behind the major holding tank. So that's what this vacation is to allow the town to put that redundant well in.
Okay. Gotcha.
So it'll be landscaped around it. It's not, and it'll be kind of like what we have over there in Spear Park. Am I correct, Mike?
Yeah.
A similar kind of situation. It'll be landscaped, but it'll have essentially a well there. Our third well.
Gotcha.
Sure we have the redundancy we need as backup.
Okay.
Yeah, it does leave that section that is underneath the right of way where the West Orange Trail goes.
Yeah, so.
It effectively allows us to meet all the setbacks for sanitary hazards. It's one of the very, very few properties in Oakland that we can actually drill a well and put it on.
Okay. Any other questions at the table?
I'm good.
Okay. I need a motion, please.
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve first public hearing reading of ordinance 2021-18. To vacate the portion of North Brock Street between East Avenue and West Orange Trail, Railroad Avenue.
Okay. Second.
I second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any public comment in the room? Do I have any public comment from afar? Please raise your hand. All right. Taking it back to the table, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next.
Okay, we have ordinance 2021-20, an ordinance of the town of Oakland, Florida, amending the town of Oakland comprehensive plan by adding a property rights element with associated text for said element thereof, providing for legislative findings and intent, providing for ratification of prior actions, providing for conflicts and severability, providing for codification, providing for the implementation of the statutory review process, and an effective date.
Amen. So the state has required us to do this. It's I'd be glad to read all these rights to you. There's 4 sentences there, but I'm not going to bother with that. Suffice it to say, this is probably the shortest comprehensive plan amendment in history. Protect our property rights, and our attorney has told us that this is what is essential to be placed in this element. It'll be sent to the Department of Economic Opportunity, like the other plan amendments that have been passed on text amendments, and I don't expect any.
And this is a requirement from the state.
Yeah, in order for you to keep going with the comprehensive plan and change it, like a land use map designation or something like that, got to do this.
Okay. All right, do we have any questions at the table? All right, I need a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to accept first public hearing of ordinance 2021-20.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any comments from the audience? Okay, do we have any comments from afar? Okay, I'll bring it back to the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, next.
Okay, so this is first public hearing for ordinance 2021-21, an ordinance of the town of Oakland, Florida, amending section 22-1 general elections of article 1 in general of chapter 22 elections of the code of ordinances of the town of Oakland, Florida, by changing the election date and providing for codification, conflict, severability, and for an effective date. So this is basically a housekeeping issue. We were getting ready to set qualifying dates for this upcoming election. And the supervisor of elections pointed out that our code was in conflict with their general established date, which is the second Tuesday of March. And we had the third Tuesday, and they would not be able to support us in that effort. So obviously we need their help. So we need to move it back to, it was at that at some point. It got changed at some point. We don't know why, but we feel it was a typo. So we're just moving it back.
As long as we're consistent with what Bill is asking for.
Yes, they've reviewed it and they like this language.
Good. Cool. Yes. Okay. Do you have any questions or comments at the table? I need a motion.
I'll make the motion again, accept first public hearing of ordinance 2021-21.
Second.
Okay. Seconded. Any questions or comments from the audience? Any questions or comments from afar? Bring it back to the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just real quick. So the second reading will be at the next meeting, and after the second reading, we'll do the resolution that sets the qualifying dates.
Okay. So any staff town manager reports?
I'm just going to have Mike just report on the paving and how we're doing on. Just real quick.
As you noticed already, the roads are changing color out there. They're getting smoother. The potholes are going away, all the cracking, and that is going away. Project is scheduled to be completed on the 27th of this month, which is Friday, I think. Yep. I believe, yeah. And it's probably going to be finished even sooner.
Well, that will be great. We got a lot of comments about the lights at night.
The lights at night?
Yes.
I think the construction lights were, they had to have those, you know, to work safely. Is that what lights you're referring to? Yes.
So anyway, I'm just.
It'll be done soon.
If they can do it as, you know, unobtrusively as possible, that would be appreciated. But I understand when you work at night, you have to.
You have to, yeah, you have to. It was basically at intersections. I came over and checked on them a couple of times during the week. And it was at intersections, not necessarily at.
But, you know, and if we're having a problem, if residents are having a problem with something, that needs to come to town hall.
Yes.
Not a page on Facebook that is not supported by the town.
Yes.
It needs to come to town hall. So
please.
Please, you know, it's just a reminder that if we want to, you know, if we want to get something resolved, that's where it needs to go.
Was there something else, Steve?
No, that was it. Now I've got a couple of quick announcements I can go through.
Okay.
First thing, we are having the vaccination health fair tomorrow from 9
That's
to 12.
exciting.
So the Department of Health will have their trailer out here and we'll be doing vaccinations. It's first come, first serve. So you don't need to make an appointment. Just if you need a vaccination, please come out. We are having the first of two community meetings a week from Thursday on September 2nd from 6 to 7:30 to talk about Oakland Avenue and what the future of Oakland Avenue could look like long-term. And it's going to encompass, you know, intersection improvements. One of the things we talked about when we met with the consultant was the next generation of canopy and how can we plant that next generation of canopy along Oakland Avenue. I think this will be a really great exercise to go through. Really, so I'm really hopeful that we'll get some residents out.
And part of it is a walking tour.
Yes, we are going to walk from here down to Oakland Avenue and Tubb Street just to kind of highlight that particular intersection and talk about, you know, kind of get a better perspective of the kind of pedestrian and intersection and just overall improvements, things to add to the character of town. So I'm excited about this project and I really hope we get a lot of input. People come out with you know, a lot of positive comments on what they'd like to see. And so we have something to move forward with, so.
And the subject matter is the subject matter for this, nothing else.
You had the second date on it?
We don't have it set yet, but we will have a second meeting. And so.
First one is Thursday a week, right?
Yeah, and I'll talk about it some at my coffee. So the other thing, I have coffee with the manager on September 9th. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we talked about tonight with Myra. And I'm also going to talk about the planning study. So I'm going to use that in my coffee. Hopefully I can get some people out for that, and we'll talk about some of this traffic things that are going on.
Mhm.
We don't have a date yet when they're going to take the bridge out, speaking of traffic for the turnpike, but they have started communicating with staff and with chief on as things are coming up. So it'll be coming soon. Next thing is there's a chamber luncheon on September 9th from 11:30 to 1:30. It's the Horizon West report. It's at the Rosen Event Center. If anybody's interested, I plan on going, but if anybody's interested in going, please let me know and I can get us signed up. Are you?
Yeah, I can go.
Do I have to sign you up, or are you part of the board?
If you know, I think you have to sign me up.
Okay, I'll take care of that. If anybody else that's interested, I'll be happy to sign you up. One other announcement. So we had a P&Z meeting last week, and there was a large crowd that came out for that meeting. I think staff did an admirable job with managing that meeting. It was for the Oakland Mixed Use Village at 4th Street and Highway 50. After the meeting, we did get notice from the applicant that they are withdrawing their application. You will see that it was expected to be on the September 13th commission meeting. You will see it on the agenda, but it will say withdrawn.
Yep.
All right, so they have officially withdrawn their application.
And we did talk a little bit about while we want to safely distance, working on trying to get as many people as we can in the building, and also the idea of putting sound out on the porches.
Yes, we staff did a debrief. We do have some things that we can work on. Some things that we can work on should we have another meeting that we expect a big crowd. This is the first one really in COVID where we had 45 people online and about 50 people in person. And again, I think staff did an admirable job and P&Z board did a great job. And we have the room set up like this because we're doing the Zoom. So it doesn't allow for a whole lot of seats in here, but we do have a few things that we can improve on. Absolutely. And so we've talked about that.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you know, we're not clairvoyant. We don't know how many people are coming.
Yes.
And, but I must say, I'm very, very happy that we had to manage a crowd.
Yeah.
Yes. We'll be celebrating Hispanic Heritage during the month of September. And we also are going to have a Hispanic Heritage event September 17th from 5 to 7 in the evening. So we'll be getting information coming out on that soon.
And where will that be?
In front of the Arts and Heritage Center.
Okay. Another great use for that useless
yes.
building. Yeah.
We haven't hit our stride. We haven't hit our stride on that building. There'll be a lot.
That building has a lot of uses and it will come along.
I believe the commission did get a few letters concerning the avenues on Oakland, and we are working through the lighting and working with because there is going to be lights out there because of the parking and being safe, but we are going to make sure that they are compliant and that they're as least impactful as possible. And there's still a lot of landscaping that's going to go in that will be in front of that fence that has been brought up. So there are still a lot of pieces that they have gotten their CO on their community building. So that's the main building in the middle.
Are they advertising? Because people keep asking.
I believe they will be if they haven't already.
What's that?
Advertising for the apartments.
Yeah, they're not quite ready, but they will be.
But if you call them, they'll tell you what the rents are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I could even find a number. It's fine. I'm just curious.
Within the next couple of weeks, I expect you'll see more information on
okay.
But they did get the CO on that building, and they're working on the other ones. But there's still a lot of little detailed things that will be taken care of over the course of the next couple of months. And then we've got 4th Friday coming up Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And just to clarify my comments, I wasn't calling that building useless. I was.
We understand that.
That building is not useless. It's beautiful and it's going to be an asset to the community.
Yes, ma'am. It absolutely will be.
And I'm really pleased to hear about Hispanic Heritage Month. That's really a great way to use it.
So yeah, that's everything I got. I'm sorry it wasn't a shorter list, but
that's okay.
We do have some things going on.
Did we run it? Okay, so my non-mechanical side, I saw on the news that a couple of utilities ran into trouble with oxygen for their water.
And we don't use that process.
Okay, so we were okay. And they were asking residents to limit their water usage.
Yeah, City of Orlando.
And Winter Park. Joseph?
I'm not, well, you know, I went to the Florida League of Cities convention. I do a debriefing later on once we get all of the policy committees. Of course, you know, they have the finalizing the policy committee priority statements. And so once that comes out, I give a more of a debriefing. But I would say from the past president, President Ortiz, and the new president, Philip Walker, who's the commissioner out of Lakeland, the goal is to engage Tallahassee more. And so you're gonna probably hear them talking about local voices, make local choices. And so it's gonna be a lot of—
I like that.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of advocacy going back and forth, trying to get Tallahassee involved. A lot of advocacy on the local level, trying to get the citizens involved. So you're gonna see a lot of those things. Advocacy is gonna be big, economic development is gonna be big. Workforce housing, instead of affordable housing, workforce housing is going to be big, and transportation. And of course, I know Mayor Dim is going to probably come back with his transportation. So it was a good conference, some good information. Of course, the attendance was a little bit lower because of COVID, and they had some positive cases out there. But all in all, there's going to be a lot of asks of all of us. I know we as a town, you know, going to be interacting more to help with our infrastructure and things of that nature. But it's going to be a lot of asks on all levels to engage our Tallahassee counterparts, because there's still that gridlock. And so,
right.
And then no session starts in January. So I know we're going to be getting ready sooner than later. You know, James Harris was here. And so as we get prepared, there's going to be a lot asked of us as, you know, local elected officials and staff to really be involved with the process of engaging our.
Well, we'll go if we can, if we're able to. You know, we were not. Yeah. You know, Corona is the only thing that's kept us away. We go every year. And the other thing that I don't know when they start talking about it, I guess it's when session comes, is the redistricting, because House Seat 44, I understand, kind of hangs in the balance as to whether we keep it or not.
Yeah, the committee, they start meeting next month, and I know James is going to be going up there. So
we're going to need to watch that.
All that's going to be going on board. So have we decided, I know you have an idea, but have we decided when we're going to put together our paper or our ask?
We started working on the alternative water one, and then Mike and I are still discussing the other one. So we are looking to do 2 legislative asks this time.
Okay.
So I've got, Alicia's got a bunch of information to put together the flyer for the alternative water, and I've got the House forms. I haven't gotten the Senate. What the wastewater is going to look like.
And then everybody's playing musical chairs up there as far as what they're running for.
Yeah,
So,
gotta get that to state.
We're gonna lose Bracy, and you know, the Senate redistricting probably won't affect us.
Yeah.
So we're gonna lose Bracy, but House Seat 44 may change, and we may have a different House seat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember talking to Bracy. So we do have him for one more session, and then he's moving on to run for Congress.
Everybody's changing. Yeah, they're all running for something different.
Yeah. So okay, yeah. But once I get those notes, and I got to reach out. I'm going to get some information also on grants. The FOC is really helping those who are members to get access to grants. So they have a team to help us. So I'm going to construct an email and get it to you and Mike tomorrow. Get that plugged in to help us with, because it's, of course we know there's millions of dollars, but FLC has a team that's helping cities and towns.
That's great.
After grants. And so they announced that this summer. Yeah, this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely get that contact information to you.
And we did get, or I got email from Val Deming's office about was the emergency fund?
American Rescue
Plan. And if we needed any help, navigating through that, they were there to help us. So that's, just the responsiveness of our elected officials has, I think, really stepped up. And I think part of that is our presence and our engagement too. So.
Yeah, well, some of our neighbors aren't doing much as far as engaging.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I know. I think we did the right things. And I think we were very strategic in who we chose to help represent us.
So that's all I have right now. As I get more data.
That's enough.
It's
a lot of work.
No, it's a lot of stuff that has come, but I want to make sure instead of me being repetitive, I want to make sure it's all packaged together because
that'd be great.
It's going to start next month.
Yeah,
to be honest,
it'll be here before we know it.
Yeah, start next year.
Mikey?
How fast are you?
Okay. And you are monitoring the school
every day
and the Orange County and the state.
Well, we're waiting to see what Orange County does tonight.
Right.
So, and then we'll regroup again.
Go, Teresa. I think we covered it all. Great work. So
all right, if all hearts and minds are satisfied, let's adjourn. It is 8:33 p.m.